I'm going to start with the man behind me. Big Roger.
Big Roger Bannister.
Yeah.
Pals called him Rog.
Okay, he was pal.
Listen, there's things I know. That's it. All right, Rog.
All right.
Running fast today,
I'm
mate.
going to call you John from now on.
That would really bother me.
So, Roger Bannister infamously was told his heart would explode, or any human's heart would explode, if a sub 4 minute mile was to be achieved.
Do you have any, already interrupting you, but do you have any, what was the rationale behind that? I know that was a thing and it was just like, listen, this is impossible, your whole fucking head will explode. But what was there any kind of rationale behind that? Did somebody go, no, because this amount of beats per minute, or this speed, it just seems so abstract to say. No, factually, the science says your heart's going to explode. Don't run any faster than the
same sort of medieval logic as you've cut your leg, let's amputate it.
It's so mental. But
no, but I think
it's a brilliant way to introduce it. Because almost he was being told, if you try this, you'll die, which is brilliant.
Yeah. Essentially, the logic was that if as training for a sub 4 minute mile at the time, the world's first ever sub 4 minute mile, he was told by medical professionals in Oxford that his heart would explode if that was to be achieved, or in the pursuit of it being achieved. Brilliant. And he did it. He went sub 4, and he did it in a pair of what we would call clippity-cloppity, rickety-rackety, horrible,
like
cloppy little shoes. I don't even know what the cleats they were called.
They were. I can picture them, but I can't remember what they were made of. It was like a kind of...
I want to call them clogs.
Yeah, like a leathery, horrible...
Yeah, I don't know why I want to call them clogs. It just feels fitting. Just do it. But either way, not spikes as we know them today.
And also the terrain.
Yeah, the track wasn't anything like
a terrain you get in a local municipal that hadn't been done up for 30 years. It's like gravel.
Yeah. Not nice. Not nice. And he did it, and the picture of him doing it is there, signed behind me, which my dad actually got me as a gift when I got rejected from Oxford University, which is kind of...
For making such claims as your heart won't explode if you run.
Yeah, the likelihood was about the same. But no, he got me that because that was done at a track in Oxford. I think it is now the Sir Roger Bannister track, athletics track at Oxford University. And that was a historic moment, which I think, for one, track and field set the precedent of this can actually be done. And that set off a cascade of sub 4 minute miles.
So incredible.
But also from a sporting performance point of view in general, in terms of new frontiers, I think it kind of opened the doors to people thinking a little bit less nihilistically, physiologically, whereby people thought, oh, maybe one's heart won't explode with that level of exertion, which I'm sure will have trickled into other sports downstream, cycling, and anything that requires that level of exertion. I think Roger Bannister really put a flag in the ground for this can be done, the human condition can work ourselves to this point, and that will translate across disciplines. So I think for what he did for performance as a whole is a real milestone moment.
Yeah, not beyond. Yes, it's beyond just being the guy who ran the fastest at that point, isn't it? It's like you said, he's telling the world, set your standards higher, or think beyond. It's brilliant. It's really brilliant. I love the whole, your heart's going to explode, and he's just going, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to do it in these shoes. Watch me, watch this drive. It's brilliant. Yeah, I don't think we can top that in actuality.
Podcast over.
Yeah, goodbye now. You want to pong that over to me? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, you'll go.
Setting records, and I think when we discussing this as part of the podcast, I think you joked as well that a lot of mine might be abstract or old.
Yep.
We're not going for abstract, but we are going for old. So anybody beyond a certain age may not even have heard of Daley Thompson, which would be a crying shame. Daley Thompson won the decathlon gold 1980 and 1984 Olympics, I believe. If I'm wrong there, I'll be very surprised. I think the 1980 and 1984 Olympics back to back. I also think that his records for that were unbeaten. Nobody beat him for 9 or 10 years after that. So they held for that long. And I think for me, it was he held the imagination of the British public for so long. And again, I guess you probably had to be there now because he's no longer kind of in the limelight or in the public eye. But he was such a nice guy, such a kind of a wholesome, all-round, lovely dude. And so everything sport should be. He just went out there, had fun, worked like an extraordinary athlete, which he was, beat everybody, and then was humble and graceful in it. And not to kind of divert the cause of this particular podcast, but also he was the first real black guy to kind of push through those kind of boundaries as far as Britain was concerned. He became a national hero despite that, which I think really pushed things in the right direction for that kind of thing. But for me, that kind of sits top. That's my Roger Bannister well, although he came before that, but that was the kind of immersion for me into kind of look at what sports are, look at what this guy's done. And I guess, without trying to make this kind of too contrived, this and another one I'll bring up later on spoke to me, because it was decathlon, spoke to me about this sort of all-round nature of this guy could do everything. You know, he wasn't the best sprinter in the world, he wasn't the best javelin thrower in the world, but he was excellent at all those things beyond the scope of most, if not anybody that you would meet outside of that circuit, and then also beat everybody, and it was just amazing. So it was really exciting as a kid to watch. You're not just kind of tuned into one guy doing one thing. You're like, okay, how's Daly going to do in the thing? How's he going to do in this thing? And
it's like PE.
Yeah, it's exactly, mate. And at that age, 1980, 84, you know, I'm coming up for 10 years old towards the end of it. And he got kind of famous. He stayed famous for a good sort of 8-9 years after that. And also one of the first kind of celebrity sportsmen, in the sense that he wore cool things, like he wore trainers with a suit, which was unheard of, you know. And he kind of slipped into that kind of celebrity kind of bracket. And so brilliant. I still, if ever I think of Daley Thompson, I still get that kind of childlike rush, that kind of, oh, what a man, what a hero. I want to be just like him. And now I am exactly like Daley Thompson. So it all came true.
Because you wore trainers with a suit one time. Yeah. In the same vein from my end, 1936, Jesse Owens.
When you were growing up in 1980s?
Of course. No, I'm not saying I'm anything like Jesse Owens, but the geopolitical climate at the time is obviously nuanced, and the statement made by his performance at the Olympics was just remarkable, and the bravery that went with actually stepping into the arena to make that statement is incredible. Because I think actually the big thing to focus on is the geopolitical impact of the Olympics. Yep. It is not simply a sporting test. It is a flexing of resource, of efficiency, of political climate, of culture, of community in host countries and everything. And it is a stage that the world views simultaneously, which means that it is a stage where big statements can be made through performance, through interviews, through whatever it might be. And I don't think that a bigger statement has ever been made than by Jesse Owens in 1936.
Okay, well, talking about Daley Thompson, maybe couldn't have come after that had that not broken.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm pretty confident Daley would have him top of his list. If that's not, anyway. Yeah, good show. And it wasn't, as you say, just that sort of political stance. He also he smashed it, didn't he?
Yeah. I need to check.
Just got there and said,
check actual results. Yeah.
He also smashed everyone.
So main thing was 1936 Olympics, 100-meter gold, 200-meter gold, 4x100 gold, and long jump gold.
Yeah, he ripped everything, didn't he?
Unbelievable. And yeah, here's a statement. He was the most successful athlete at the Games, and as a black American man was credited with single-handedly crushing Hitler's myth of Aryan supremacy. What a fucking statement that is.
Legend.
Unbelievable. I say again, just the
the crowd, I believe.
I think he was, yeah. Again, there's probably myths surrounding this, so I'm keen to just get this up in front of me. But
don't want to be too prescriptive here in case we're completely wrong.
He's actually the sixth greatest North American athlete of the 20th century and the highest ranked in his sport. Yeah, so he's actually, like, geopolitics aside, remarkable athlete.
More should be said about that, really. Although you can't eclipse what he did. But
you can't have one without the other, really.
No, it's fascinating.
Next,
big man on campus, Big Jesse. Here he comes! Look, it's Jesse. That's how it went. That's how it went for him.
He was from I think he was from somewhere in Alabama. So I think
not Iowa.
no, not Iowa.
Oh, okay.
No.
Oh, Big Jesse.
Although I'm sure rural Alabama and rural Iowa have some things in common in the fact that there are lots of fields with livestock in them. I guess that's kind of where we would make a comparison.
Yeah, I think we should.
I don't know much about Alabama at all. Nor Iowa.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound you know much about Iowa either, to be fair, but let's crack on.
Iowa's a town, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Is that where Harveston Brewery is?
Oh, God, I don't know. Now you're asking us clearly. I don't know much about Iowa either. Let's edit this out.
Anyway, yeah.
If you're from Iowa, please write in on a postcard.
Or Alabama. We don't have we have no frame of reference yet.
Loads of times.
A comparison has been drawn. Anyway, Jesse Owens, I believe. Yeah, I'm just going to have to check that he was, in fact, from Alabama, just to make sure that this was
if he was
Oakville, Alabama.
Well,
He's
there you go. Yeah, I might be. Right.
And died in Tucson, Arizona.
Alabama would have been a tough place for.
Yeah, exactly. I, again, don't have enough reference to comment on it, but the statement made and the achievements accomplished, fucking remarkable.
Yeah,
remarkable.
Well played, Jesse. Again, I said at the beginning I didn't think we could top Roger Bannister. I think we did with Jesse. I'm afraid. Sorry, Roger. This is an interesting one for me. And when you asked me to kind of think of these four things, I immediately thought of Ricky Hatton because when he was kicking about doing his big thing, he's had a few reincarnations since. But when he was, fighting at the top, I followed around. I didn't go abroad with him, but I followed around, saw all his fights in Britain, and I was a huge fan. And although he lost this fight, one of the biggest sporting moments I enjoy, and this is mostly because of the community aspect that it brought. Everybody got together for this in my community, but the nation was gripped by his fight with Floyd Mayweather, and I think that was an extraordinary sporting moment for Britain, certainly for Ricky, and certainly for boxing, because it kind of, despite him losing it, it just captured everybody's imagination. And I think there's arguments still to say. Probably less so now. In the passion and in the wake of it, it was like, the referee got in. He fought two men and all this kind of stuff. And there was a little bit of interference from the ref during that fight. He didn't let Ricky open up and play his kind of his close game and all this kind of stuff. But Floyd Mayweather won. But I just remember it specifically. This is a more personal one. Remember it. Ashley and I went to a local pub in Nottingham. It was packed out to the rafters because it was a late fight, or it was a US fight. It was on like 3 a.m, and the pub got I believe they got a license, either that or they just didn't and told us they did. But we were in there and until like the sun came up, which made it all really very exciting, and we're obviously very drunk. But that was a great moment. And again, although he lost, Ricky took. There's few fighters have done it. I guess you could argue that Conor McGregor did it to a certain degree, less so now, but he brought an army of fans with him. So everywhere that Ricky went, this whole crew of people went, like thousands of people, and it was a scene like no other. So yeah, that'll always stick for me as a personal kind of memory. The big long journey and the disappointment and the excitement of sport and all the rest of it was encapsulated in that whole campaign where he beat fighter after fighter after fighter against the odds. Just a little tough lad from Manchester, and then got to that kind of top tier and showed that wherever you come from, if you work hard enough, and he was sharp and intelligent boxer as well, but just tough. I loved it. So that for me was a great sporting moment, despite the bad outcome.
Fantastic. Next for me, I believe it was 2003, 4, something like that. But the Serena Slam, all 4 Grand Slams in a year or a season. I don't know whether it's about whatever it was. Essentially, that accomplishment, just absolute pinnacle of sport and such a long spanning career.
You got to look at Serena and think nobody's done it better. I don't think anybody will do it better. I mean, I can't see how they could.
No, that's the thing, isn't it?
And one on top or something. It's like no.
Yeah,
and it almost seems.
And the amount of time it would for somebody to be good and then sustain being that good for such a long period of time. Yeah. It's not like.
Well, she's still good.
Yeah.
What did you say? 2003.
I think it was 2003. Yeah.
Christ, 20 years later, she's still amazing.
Yeah, 2003
Yeah,
final
right.
Australian Open. Yeah, meant that she was the defending champion in all major tournaments at once. Insane.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think she stopped playing professionally at a certain level not ages ago.
I haven't seen the film. Will Smith.
Yeah, I've never understood why it's King Richard and not Serena Venus Williams as a title.
I think they, because he was an extraordinary man.
Was he?
Yeah.
Well, obviously he had to be, but
yeah, he
I hope it doesn't detract from the.
No, I don't know. But they talked about him. I remember 2003.
Will Smith's gone down in people's estimations as well, hasn't he?
Yeah. I remember around that time. So age difference between us is I remember watching all this and having it happen and being kind of really immersed in it at the time. And their dad was always there, and they always talked about him. It was a little bit like Andy Murray as he came up. And he would always refer to the fact that his mum had been by his side and coached him and did this. And she's an extraordinary individual in her own right. Yeah. And the same applied with them. So
yeah, it's just total dominance in a way that probably just due to the way that media report on these things. I mean, obviously Djokovic, Federer have had their careers, but I just feel the against the odds element of being that good for that long.
And not again, I suppose it's only fair to say that not dissimilar to Daly, Jessie, and whoever else that we could talk about, Serena also crossed boundaries. She was just simply by the virtue of taking female tennis right into the living rooms of people, and because people were invested. It was not just, oh yeah, the women are good too, I like the short skirts, whatever, which tends to be where it goes, or it's a slower game, this and the next thing. To watch Serena Williams was watching sport at its best.
Yep.
And that was, she took that now and I guess arguably made women's tennis a much more relevant sport in people's minds. I mean, clearly it had been in the first place, but she changed that. She wasn't the first to do so.
Contributed to it significantly.
Yeah, there was Billie Jean and Virginia Wade and people like that came before. But
well, Billie Jean was that Battle of the Sexes as well. That was the That was that 50s, 60s.
Billie Jean would have been early 60s. That happened, I think.
Yeah.
And then Virginia Wade,
again, but it took a long. Like you said, it took a long time for commercial mainstream for it to become.
Yeah, there were breakthrough stars in their own right. Yeah, Sue Barker was one. Breakthrough stars in their own right, but she took it to the next level, which is great for the sport.
Again, I'm purely speaking from an objective how I've observed it growing up and the media I was exposed to, rather than any real understanding of any of these things. I think it's just for me, it's when things like that, we actually look at the data and I remember being young and thinking, all 4 Grand Slams. That's pretty wild.
That's impressive.
It's just, so dominant because the amount of times you've been sat watching Wimbledon. I mean, even Tim Henman when he was like, "Is the British guy going to win?" And it's like never. Like you were always like, "Oh, they're going to manage. Are they going to manage?" And more often than not, they wouldn't. So to do that once, and then to do that in every competition within the context of 1 year,
can she possibly keep doing this? That's the question became. Not can she do this? Yeah, she's done it over and over. It's can she keep doing it? That seems impossible now.
Jimmy Carr said something interestingly on podcast recently, which was all about trajectory versus once you get to the sort of crest of the peak, whereby it's much more exciting and fulfilling to be on an upward trajectory than it is to just be at the top, because the only way down, the only way to go is down.
Yeah.
So I
that
think
almost speaks to the Ricky Hatton thing for me. It's like the fact that he nearly got there and it was so exciting and so hopeful. A little bit of me retrospectively looks back and thinks maybe it's good that he didn't, and I'm sure he doesn't feel that way, but there's something quite exciting and certainly a little bit British about the fact that we got there, we took it to them, we showed them. Ultimately, Mayweather prevailed because he's the greatest.
But Mayweather spends a lot of time talking about money and jets and bullshit because he's probably a bit bored.
Yeah. Again, at that time he was already in that was the money Mayweather was already there, but it was just a chance, and he didn't go there and get shown up. He got beat and he got flattened. He did get knocked out.
Also, the irony of me saying he's probably a bit bored with jets and hundreds of millions of dollars, just to highlight that. But the point being, essentially, because he's at the top, the only way for him is down.
Yeah.
Whereas for Hatton, he can ride the wave of the excitement up towards the top, and as you said, everybody came with him.
No, it was brilliant. Serena, extraordinary, still extraordinary.
Next,
do you know who Brian Jacks is? Okay, podcast ends.
So
Brian Jacks was. Now, this is where people can correct me. I believe he won bronze as a judoka. Olympics. It might even have been the late 60s, early 70s. I'm trying to throw my mind back. But anyway, where he became famous, and he became really very, very famous for a brief period of time, there was a show called Superstars. You ever heard of Superstars?
I've heard of it, but yeah.
So Superstars was actually, it was reignited maybe 10 years ago. Amir Khan was one of the contestants.
Yes.
But it was originally a big show, and it had an international appeal. There was an American version, there was all the rest of it. And it was sports stars who were then tested in various ways. So they had gym tests, and then there was canoeing, and then there was weightlifting, and they were just given the chance to see how well they could do at everything. And it was a brilliant show because it was a kind of a big equalizer. It was seeing your favorite star go up again. And it wasn't, back then it wasn't the big names. Like when it was reignited in like I say, a decade or so ago, they were picking superstars. It was like everything now. You don't get families on blankety blank. You get bloody superstars on it, don't you? So it was that. But these were guys that had kind of captured some kind of moment of glory, but then maybe fallen away from the limelight. So Brian Jacks came along, and people were doing these kind of things. Basically, long story short, he wiped the floor with everyone. He looked jacked as well. Interesting name to have. His upper body strength was extraordinary. He excelled in things like the canoeing and the weightlifting and all the rest of it. And then what was really amazing was, and I'll get some footage afterwards and show you because it's wild. They had dip tests. So I think it was, again, something like 60 seconds on the, or go till failure or something on the dip bars, and he did hundreds. Like literally hundreds, like up down, so fast. But it was marked. You couldn't just do little sort of short ones. And then there was push-ups, and then mountain climbers, and all kinds of stuff. And so the gym test, nobody had ever seen anything like it. It was just this guy was incredibly fit and could put his hand to everything. So for me, although arguably he had an excellent and really high caliber sporting career, and this was a TV show, but I guess it was how well can you do in these sporting events? He again, a little bit like Daly, and it was around about the same time, so it's clearly things that have kind of formed my interest in fitness, which is why he sticks in my mind. He just wiped the floor with everybody. You can look at the YouTube footage now, and it's still mind-blowing just how extraordinarily fit this guy was. And he won it all. He just smashed everyone. So he was able to do the things that you and I are talking about now. Is like, canoeing, let's have a go. And he had a go, and he was just good enough to be better than the rest, but not good enough to be the best canoeist at all. But it made you think as a kid, I can do these things.
Yeah.
I could probably do everything. And that, I think that for me was formative and the perfect time to see that. And I grew up for many years. I don't even think I knew his name as a little boy. But I just grew up for years knowing what he looked like. And, after every Wimbledon, every boy and girl runs out and plays tennis for 3 weeks. After every World Cup, we're all playing football and all the rest of it. After Superstars, all the kids were doing push-ups and doing dips and running distances, but they were doing all the things. And we made up our own little Superstars. Okay, test 1 is such and such, test 2 is such and such. So we did all these things, and you could do them anywhere. So it was almost like a little, again, this is me looking back on it as opposed to at the time I didn't see this, but it was like we were gifted sport for free. We didn't have to join any institution. We didn't have to join a club. We didn't have to do this. You could just go with your mates and do sporty things. So like you said earlier on, it's a bit like free PE. Let's do the fun stuff. We don't have to learn anything. It's just great. So Brian Jacks, amazing. I'll show you him afterwards. It'll blow your mind. Anybody listening, look up Brian Jacks.
How's it spelled? Like J-A-X?
Jacks.
Yeah, okay.
No, Jacks.
Oh, right, okay, like 2 first names. Right, interesting. Okay. My all-time favourite sporting moment is when Japan beat South Africa in the pool stages of the World Cup in 2015. Because, 1, it was an unbelievable game of rugby. 2, it was in Japan. And the crowd was just, I want to say, it sounds so patronising to say adorable. But Japan, when they hosted the World Cup, a lot of them kind of admitted that they didn't necessarily know as much about rugby as you might expect.
I remember this.
But they just bought in so patriotically that they were all just there, kind of just having a good time.
Yeah.
And the look on their faces as they were winning was just the panning to the crowd. You're like, oh my God, this means so much to them. So it was kind of the trickle down pride in country and pride in the players and the gutsy performance that went into beating arguably the best team in the world at the time on home turf in the pool stages. Unfortunately, I think they went out in the semis from memory. It was a real big turning point for Japan as a rugby nation. Made a real clear statement to South Africa, who like to talk about rugby and how good they are at it at any given opportunity. There's probably a South African listening now who's hitting pause so he can send us a DM to be like, oh, you got 9 South Africans in your Scotland team, blue. Okay, cool, thanks. Any chance?
They might be ready to complain about that.
Yeah, that was convincing. But no, any humble South Africans will be able to laugh at that because it's just any given opportunity. We did a clip on the Modern Mind where we were talking about Scotland versus England, and a South African commented, being like, referencing a game where England got beat by South Africa, which somehow invalidated the opinion of a former Scotland rugby captain. And like, what?
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So I think it was just the performance that went with it.
Yeah.
The passion and the power of sport in that moment, and the scenes that you saw all around Japan in the fan zones. And
you took the words out of my mouth in the power of sport. What was interesting about that? I'm not a rugby fan, as you know. I don't know. I don't even going to pretend to know a lot about it. I understand it from a strength conditioning perspective, and that's as far as my interest goes. But I got swallowed up by that whole thing, and you know, exactly as you say, as patronising as you said, it might sound. The crowd, adorables. They just, you wanted to be with them.
Yeah, I use the word adorable because it was like it was like a childish. It was just like a childish interest. Yeah, like,
and you could see the joy. And what's really cool about rugby in that sense, and something I really do love about it, it was very arms open. There was no, and I don't want this to be an argument for anybody, but football's not the same. Football tends to be, this is my country, this is UK, and it becomes very nationalist or nationalistic rather, in that the welcoming in doesn't, it happens to a certain degree with the World Cup, but then you become very immersed in your own team, whereas everybody, possibly even the South Africans, would still have to look on at the Japanese welcome, and the passion of the crowd, as well as the extraordinary story of that Japanese team, and congratulate them and see the beauty and the joy in it. So yeah, good shout, mate. Good show. I wouldn't have come up with that at all, but now that you're saying it, I can remember it, and I remember the scenes. I have games, and that tells you enough from my perspective.
I have made a mistake though.
Go on.
It wasn't in Japan.
I thought it was in Japan.
No, it was.
Completely wrong then. Right,
no. So it was in the UK. It was in Brighton at the Amex Stadium.
Oh, the game.
Yeah, but the coverage was comprehensive in Japan, in the fan zones and everything.
Okay.
And then it was the following World Cup where that game, where essentially you saw the buy-in from the Japanese fans into the sport as a result of that pinnacle moment. So yeah, it was.
Well, shows how much I know, but I was swept up in.
All rugby World Cups. I mean, all rugby World Cups blend into one for me, really, because I love them. I think they're a fantastic culmination of all of the positive that goes with the sport, aside from the terrible brown smart shoes that some rugby fans decide to wear with loose-fitting jeans.
Town shoes.
That's what football fans always like to point towards.
That's still happening.
No, it does, yeah. Oh, go on any train from southwest London to Twickenham and you'll just be awash.
Shiny brogues.
Yeah.
Well done, mate.
How did they get on? How did they actually get on in Japan World Cup? How did they actually get on? I feel like they got to because it was 2015 in the UK, or was it England? I can't remember what it was called, but it was in the UK. I can't remember where Japan got to in the actual World Cup when they hosted it, but I think the main thing was it was just. I really wanted Japan to do well. I remember actually feeling gutted when they went out on the home stage, in the same way I did France when it was home in the most recent World Cup. Yeah, because they were a world-class team. Seems that that's kind of the come-down effect of that, and with Dupont leaving now as well after the World Cup, means that they've kind of lost that mojo a little bit. But I just love the attitude of the Japanese to that fan base, and there was like all the news reports afterwards. Any stadium where Japanese fans was spotless, when they left.
Well, that tells you something.
Things like that. It's just that's why I say
cultural thing that we can
it's
learn.
It's just
something
complete
from.
admiration for the fact that a country can get behind a team that much when a lot of them don't even know what's going on by their own admission, which I just thought was fantastic. When you've got people sitting there and being like, that guy's fucking shit at his own team. You're like, well, come on, Kev. Like, I don't. Are you qualified enough to determine whether a professional sports player it crosses that threshold or not?
Yeah.
But anyway,
well done, Japan.
Next,
I have done 4, so we're slightly off.
Have
numbers.
You?
Yeah.
I don't think you have.
I have.
Anyway, we don't have time for another one before your call, so we'll just keep going.
Done 4.
What are your 4? Summarise them.
In reverse order: Brian Jacks, Ricky Hatton, Daley Thompson.
You've done 3.
Jamie, done 4. My number 4. This is obviously why I thought that you'd done 5 as well, because I felt like I'd finished. Why could you do another one? Very tired. Not a sporting.
I've got a 5th to be clear. Yeah,
well, if we've got time, we'll do another one.
We'll have time if you get on with it.
The not a sporting moment.
Definitely should be more prepared though. To be clear,
I did, but I just forgot one. I actually have prepared it. I was able to look at my notes and realise I just forgot my notes, which is kind of half prepared. Not a sporting moment in itself, but a sporting time. I think my sports were combat sports. Boxing and as I've said before, it wasn't called MMA. It was no holds barred or all in or whatever the fuck we called it. But it became a sport, and for me, a great time in sport was the point at which the public imagination caught on to what was then the UFC. So there's kind of a time span here of maybe even 7 or 8 years, but the very, I mean, if we want to singularly break it down to one particular moment, when the UFC 1 happened, and Hoist Gracie came in. Do you know who Hoist Gracie is?
Yep.
Yeah. So Hoist Gracie came in as a small guy in what at the time seemed ridiculous to even be wearing his gi, fighting all comers. So you've got huge guys, 210 pounds and above, compared to him, who was, I think, I'm jumping between metrics, but I think Hoist was about 75 kilos or something, just a small guy. Took on everybody and beat them with jiu-jitsu, which was unseen and unheard of, and unknown to a lot of people watching. It's like, what is he even doing? Which was brilliant, because some of us that did know what he was doing were going, oh God, this is going to hurt. And it was brutal to watch. And he won, and then there was another UFC. That was supposed to be just a showcase, one and done. And it was so popular that they said, oh, we'll do it again, we'll bring in these other fighters. And you've got, I'm not sure if it was the first or the second one, there was a guy came in with one boxing glove on. So he obviously thought he would protect his own knuckles on that hand, but he might need to hold on to things with this hand. And even that's bizarre, isn't it? It's just coming in and bringing entirely their own sport into the arena and see. So there was genuinely a which one works the best kind of game. That's what it was about. And the point was the Gracies, who organised it ultimately, were saying ours works the best, and here we'll prove it. Anybody can fight us, which they've been doing on their own circuit in Brazil for decades. But they brought it to the big stage, and in that instance, jiu-jitsu did work best, and it continued to work best until fighters, and this is the kind of scene that I really, really enjoyed, and still enjoy to this day, but there was a moment where it became kind of real. Fighters eventually got a little bit wise to either, oh right, okay, jiu-jitsu's a legitimately crazy thing to deal with if you don't know what it is, so let's learn about it, and maybe there's ways around it. And then there was wrestling became the kind of collegiate wrestling became the dominant skill to have. If you could wrestle, you might be able to out-wrestle a jiu-jitsu player. And so what we were seeing was a real opportunity for these sports to go against each other. And then it became, over time, it became MMA, which is a sort of an amalgamation of all those things. And MMA in of itself is its own discipline now. You practice, so you do jiu-jitsu, and then you do jiu-jitsu for MMA, and they're different things. Grappling for MMA is different to grappling within a pure grappling sport. Because it's evolved so much. But there was a time where people were learning how to piece these things together, And I guess anybody who knows the fighters we're talking about, when it became huge, I guess, was when Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, big names like that were kind of becoming household names, which to us who had been in that sport from early days was entirely insane. So not a sporting moment, but a kind of a zeitgeist moment, I suppose. And I guess UFC 1 was a huge sporting moment, so let's call that the sporting moment. But that kind of whole scene where it evolved into being a legitimate standalone sport, which still evolves and still changes and still ebbs and flows, for me was extraordinary.
Fantastic. So the most emotional sporting moment that gets me every time, Matthias Steiner, 2008 Olympics in Beijing. 105 kilo plus weightlifter. His wife had died recently in a car crash.
I didn't recognize the name. I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And he went into his second clean and jerk. So he failed his first. Second clean and jerk secured him a medal. And then gold position with the discrepancy between snatch and the clean and jerk with the person that was in gold essentially meant that he went for bust and loaded up 261 kilos, I believe it was.
Let's just pause for a moment.
261
kilos. Okay, continue.
Which coincidentally was, I think, an 11 kilo PB attempt. An 11 kilo PB attempt after failing his first clean and jerk. Beijing Olympics.
Yeah.
Huge amount of pressure, huge amount of emotional turmoil leading up to it. And he absolutely smoked it.
Yeah.
And the emotion that he releases immediately is palpable. And there's actually an edit online that somebody's done in a sort of cartoon animated format of his wife as sort of an angel helping him
I've seen it.
lift the bar. And I don't know why. It's just
getting emotional now?
I am actually a bit, yeah. Told you, it gets me every time.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. I've seen the animated version, which at first, as it came on, I thought was going to be a bit corny, and then I watched it all the way through, and I'm like, this is
corny, but it like what it represents is just it's a very simple thing.
What year was that?
2008.
Okay.
And he's lost a lot of weight now. He's got a new family. And he's focusing on different disciplines. I think he's obviously still strong as an ox, but I think he's going through a bit of a journey of he's achieved all he needed to in that sport, and he's now playing around with different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, seeing the application of emotion to a objective measurement of strength does go to show that there's a lot within us when it comes to things like that. And I think seeing the way he reacted, having taken that risk and having at that level of the sport, beating your PB by about, I think it was 9 or 11 kilos.
Yeah. Which is a significant percentage.
Just ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, at that level, what you'll see somebody's 3 attempts being like 246, 249, 252.
Yeah. And at that level, he'll be PBing, so incrementally, so small, in such small increments over the course of a training cycle. You know, you're talking about half a kilo, quarter of a kilo, and then on the day we might go for a kilo more than we did last year.
Yeah.
Let's go for 11. is what, and again, as you've described, that was the way he was going to win. You know, it wasn't a case of bollocks, I think I can do it. It was a case of, if I don't do this, I don't achieve what I want to achieve. So he was forced to make that decision essentially, and as you say, it was extraordinary. Well played, and nice to hear. I didn't know that the follow up to that. Nice to hear that he's gone on and he hasn't.
As far as I'm aware, again, we this has all been very
opportunities and all that kind of stuff.
Very top line and colloquial from us today. So there's probably a lot that needs fact checked. But I think this is what I've enjoyed about this is actually tapping into my memory of these events unprepared, because it's forced me to think on why I've actually welled up a bit telling that because it's.
I wrote all my 4 down. It's like you say, when you try and think about what your favourite sporting moments are, you could sit down with a pen and paper and not come out of a cupboard for 4 days longer, because there's so many, because we're so...
Yeah, I could keep going.
Sport. Yeah, I could keep going. But it's nice to find, with all 4 of them, I think there's an emotional connection for each of us, which is pretty cool, because none of the ones I've described didn't have some kind of reflection on why I even love sport, and or what it meant to me at the time, as opposed to reading out stats, and saying this person won this because they are this, this, and this, which arguably Serena probably fits into that.
Yeah.
But then what Serena brought, and as you've described earlier on, it isn't just what she did; it's how she did it and who she was, and what she what she brought to the sport itself, which is extraordinary. So
and I think it fits in very nicely with our narrative recently, especially in this setting, in previous episodes, on how, as a mechanism, training across disciplines from an individual point of view is life-changing because it opens your eyes to new things and new experiences and new memories and new forms of enjoyment.
Yeah.
And the performance metrics are just the milestones along the way. And trying to extract value externally from those performance metrics, unless you're a professional athlete, if that's all you're doing it for, I'd argue you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I'd agree.
These people are at the pinnacle of their sport, and their performance metrics have laid the foundations for other people to become better, whatever that means.
And look at Brian Jacks. He's a guy who dedicated himself over and over and over, and then just had a great time just doing everything. Just everything.
And inspired you and a whole load of other kids up in the north of Scotland to do lots of other things too.
I think or everywhere. I think Brian Jacks was maybe a Yorkshireman. There's another fact.
That doesn't shock me at all. Yorkshire's bigger than Scotland in terms of population. I was reminded of that the other week. It was a fact that had gone dormant in my mind. Yeah, not landmass, but population. Yorkshire is bigger than Scotland.
Yep.
So, Brian Jacks, you've won the numbers game there, my friend.
London is... Anyway, it doesn't matter. Right. Yeah. Well done, Brian. You've inspired an old man to break himself 100 times over.
And he's done it very successfully.
Yeah. That was enjoyable, mate. I really did enjoy that. We could probably sit for hours, but I don't want to.
I was thinking throughout, we probably should have come with a list of all the facts associated with each of these, but actually, I did really enjoy trying to pull on my memories of things. And there's definitely some things I got wrong along the way.
There are definitely sort of key facts. Please do let us know, and we'll apologise for them somewhere. But I think we've covered the
essence of all of them.
Of what it is we're trying to describe.
Yeah. And note that almost none of them are that aligned with anything that we do or focus in currently.
No, not really.
Sport is a mechanism for change.
There is something in my passion for things that Mr. Thompson ignited by doing everything. Same with Brian Jack, by doing everything.
Jeff Thompson, for reference.
That's a different Thompson, who was very important in my life too. But yeah, Daley Thompson, Brian Jacks for me they do speak to what I like to do, and that inspired me in a good way. But equally, the pursuit of excellence in anyone is always exciting to watch. But yeah.
There we are. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye now.